welcome back, Turnpike Fantasy Football. This is the round one of the playoffs preview show. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Pabula, and I'm here to talk to you about what was last week, the final week of the 2013 Turnpike Fantasy Football season, as well as the playoffs this year. We have 6 participants in the playoffs, and 6 of us are going home. But I know what you're all thinking. I know what you're thinking, so let's just get it out of the way right out there. Finally, I got a haircut. I know all season I've been trying to go with some kind of new look, and it just really wasn't working. I finally gave up and said, this hairline just ain't going to do what it used to. So the long nightmare that was this season with my hair is now over. So now let's get into this past week's games. I want to congratulate those of you who made the playoffs. I want to say goodbye to those of you who haven't. So let's look at some of the games from last week, and let's start off with one that really had no playoff implications whatsoever, because both teams will be spending the postseason watching the rest of you guys playing, and that is Mike Bond's Eastfall Jedi took on the Downingtown Destroyers. Mike Bond won this one 105-75. Mike got 26 points out of Eddie Lacy, 15 points out of Matt Ryan, and 15 points out of Zach Stacy, where John got 25 points out of Colin Kaepernick, 12 points out of the Carolina Panthers defense, and 11 points out of Dwayne Bowe. John, rough way to finish. You look so promising halfway through the season. I thought at minimum you were going to at least make a playoff spot. Turns out that wasn't the case, and I'm really, really surprised by it, to be honest with you. I thought your team was well put together. Loved your running backs. You just had some players. Kaepernick didn't really pan out for you, as much as that hurts me to say. Dwayne Bowe really was a high draft pick of yours that we've discussed it ad nauseum that really probably shouldn't have been. So Mr. Bond, not a current or a defending, but a past champion. At least you didn't finish in last place. That did not happen. That's because Anthony Parisi's Woodbury Wankers took on Asgardian Thunder Gods, Chris Long's team. And Chris won this one 103-101. Chris got 32 points out of Jamal Charles, 22 points out of the Baltimore Ravens defense, and 15 points out of Andrew Luck. Where Anthony got 30 points out of Tom Brady, 21 points out of Kendall Wright, and 15 points out of Jason Witten. Once again, neither of those teams has made the playoffs. No playoff berth for Mr. Long this year. He had the opportunity to make it with some help. He didn't get the help he needed. I think Chris is probably going to be regretting not starting Harry Douglas for a couple weeks now. Hopefully he'll be paying attention to what's going on in the playoffs, because he does have some interesting storylines brewing in his household. More on that in a second. Mr. Parisi, after making it all the way to the championship game last year, you finish in the basement this year. This was a stunning season for you. Draft picks, bad trades. I can't point to one specific thing. Perhaps next year we can talk, have a couple coaching lessons, and maybe get you back up into playoff contention. Although, who the hell am I? I'm right there with you as a bystander for the playoffs this year. And another match from last week. Now, the rest of these are all going to have playoff implications, so let's just get this one out of the way quick and easy. My Warriors of Babylon took on Greg Long's Get Work Done, and I did what I wanted to do. I beat Greg 98-95. Greg, however, had the right pieces fall in place in playoff situation, and he did get himself into the playoffs. I won this one 98-95. I got 20 points out of Maurice Jones-Drew. That is the first time you're hearing his name this season. Maurice Jones-Drew is a top scorer for my team. That's not what I was planning when I drafted him in the second round. Also got 20 points out of my 49er defense and 17 points out of Tony Romo. Greg got 38 points out of Noshan Marino, and then a very measly 13 points out of Peyton Manning and 13 points out of Steven Jackson. Greg, congratulations on making the playoffs. I think it's excellent that you made it. I'm excited for you. I'm also excited for this other matchup that happened last week, because when your brother Kenny Long's Gladiators took on Bob Crane's Julius Jones and beat them 92-86, you eliminated Mr. Crane, Kenny, and you yourself made the playoffs, setting up a very interesting first round matchup. Kenny, you got 23 points out of the number 1 pick overall, Adrian Peterson, 22 points out of Brandon Marshall, and 14 points out of the Dallas Cowboys defense. Where you, Bobby, got 23 points out of Drew Brees, 16 points out of Calvin Johnson, and 18 points out of the Denver Broncos defense. And with that, Bobby, you have been eliminated with Calvin Johnson, with Drew Brees. The two that you said going high on was the way to go, and I argued mightily against those picks. And you two are like me, watching the playoffs from the sidelines. So, let's go to the next matchup. And really a great matchup, and one that it's gonna sound quite familiar in a couple days. We have Matt Dreyfus's Fishtown Off in the Corner taking on Jeffariah Goldenbaum's Hamilton Square Possums, and Jeff wins this one 128-89. Now, both of you have secured playoff berths. Matt, to your brilliance early on in the season and persevering some skids, but always picking up where you lost and winning the next week. 128-89. Jeff got 39 points out of Josh Gordon, 24 points out of Alex Smith, and 15 points out of Rob Gronkowski. Where Matt, you received 21 points out of Cam Newton, 20 points out of Andre Brown, and 15 points out of Michael Floyd. So what's interesting about that, guys, is there will be a Fishtown Off in a Corner versus a Hamilton Square Possum Part 3 this season, which I find incredibly interesting, because you guys are going to turn around and play each other again next week in the playoffs. And then the last matchup of last week really was kind of fitting for it to end this way, where the two top seeds in our playoffs this year, Jeff Szyminski's Paper Tiger and Mr. Brian Sheehan's A Grand Equals a Pound, tied 109-109. Both of you securing first round buys this week. We'll get out a little more on that in a minute. So, guys, congratulations on making the playoffs. I'm really, really excited to be watching as a bystander. For now on, we're only focusing on you guys, the playoff-bound teams. You might even notice in the consolation bracket, John Moore and I myself have agreed, season's over for us. Our teams are benched, so our score this week will be 0-0. I encourage all the rest of you to do the same. Season's over. Why worry about stupid things like this fantasy football stuff for the rest of the season? We've got plenty of things to talk about right now. We've got things to talk about these playoff position teams. Greg and Kenny Long taking on each other in a long bowl, a first round long bowl, which meaning only one long can go on to maybe the championship game, if that. One long will be eliminated, one will be moving on to the second round of the playoffs. And then the excitement of that second round matchup, or that third time matchup rather in the first round, of Jeffariah Heskawi Goldenbaum and Mr. Matt Dreyfus. I am really excited for all four of these matchups. I'm also excited for the ones who have the bye weeks this week. I just want to once again congratulate you on receiving those byes. You guys played very well this season. Some really interesting moves, some interesting draft picks. Really good stuff, guys. So congratulations to you too. As for you guys, Kenny, Greg, I don't know, man. This is a tough one to call. And when we get to this week's matchups, which we're going to do right now, I'm going to make my predictions. Yeah, so I'm happy beyond words to tell you that this season's over for myself. It was a long, trying season. All new strategy next year. I'm going to change all kinds of conventional thinking. It goes out the window. Football's changed, especially fantasy football. I do want to go one more time and congratulate all of you for making the playoffs. I want to congratulate you, Jeff. I want to congratulate you, Brian, on getting the bye weeks. But let's focus on the 4 of you guys playing this week, okay? Because Brian and Jeff, I'll focus on you next week. But right now, let's focus on the other 4. And let's start off first with this matchup, and that is the Long Bowl. These 2 teams basically started off gangbusters in this league, and I know a lot of us thought that the championship game really could be the Long kids. I know John Moore and I had a conversation about this. Injuries happen, and they hit you guys hard. And I also think that some production from some veterans is slipping and not going to exactly where you expected them to be. When you draft Adrian Peterson in the first round and then wind up with Aaron Rodgers as your second pick, that should be an automatic ticket to the playoffs. But it's been a struggle for you, Kenny, because of the fact that Aaron has been hurt. Same goes for you, Greg. You had Arian Foster and you had Peyton Manning. You had them. It was the dream matchup for you as well. But you lost your Arian Foster, so you've been struggling. So I look at this matchup and I see what you guys have, and really what I see are 2 plotting offenses that kind of just put solid, steady chunks of numbers up on the board for you guys. But when I look at it and I see this here, I know right now I'm looking at what the ESPN has projected and I know what they're saying, but I see this differently. I think Kenny's going to try to pick up a different quarterback this week off waivers. Okay, I don't know who it will be, but I think that's who he's going to do, because Scott Tolzien obviously ain't going to cut it. And is he going to pick up Matt Flynn? Possibly. Who's he going to go after? I don't know. Is anybody else going to try to get somebody before him? But all I know is it's going to take some time for him to get a quarterback, get him in there, and then get it going. But I like it, Kenny. I think that's the right strategy. My prediction is Kenny Long and the Gladiators get to move on and go into the next round of the playoffs. Kenny Long moves on. And in the other matchup for next week, we've got really the one that I'm really excited about. I'm excited about Long Bowl just because of the whole Long thing, but I'm also excited about this one, part 3 of Jeff Araya has Gary Goldenbaum taking on Matt Dreyfus. And these 2 teams, I'm telling you, are good. They're both built very well. Jeff built a great team from receiving core depth. His running backs, he'll tell you himself, he's not really comfortable about his running backs. They don't need to be more than average, though, when you have Dez Bryant, Vincent Jackson, Josh Gordon, throw in Rob Gronkowski, which, by the way, drafting him and stashing him on the bench and getting through those first couple weeks of the season without him and now plugging him in, you look like a genius, Jeff. Where Matt, your team, as always, you draft well, you draft solid, and you did a very good job again. I'm going to go even further beyond my predictions right now. Are you ready for this, guys? This is what I think. I think the champion of this league comes out of this matchup. I do. I'm saying that totally from my gut feeling. That's what I think. I think whoever wins this moves on, beats whoever they play next week, moves on into the championship game and wins it. Jeff Goldenbaum is going to be the next 2-time champion. Jeff, your receiving core, all you need is one guy each week to hit one of those 50-yard touchdowns. That's it. And you're going to be solid. Those points are going to explode. And I could see multiple times that happening. I could see it happening with Dez Bryant on Thanksgiving, which, by the way, happy Thanksgiving to all of you and yours. I want you to all know I'll be thinking about every one of you guys as I'm watching Dez Bryant score long touchdowns all game long. Jeff, you're my pick. It's not a kiss of death. It's what I think. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Bula. Until next week.